What's going on, guys? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Ready Gold Standard podcast. My name is Zach Hernandez, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Matt Llewellyn. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you all had a Merry Christmas. If you're tuning in on Twitter, head over to youtube.com/49ers Hive and join from there so we can see and interact with your comments. With all that said, Matt, how was your Christmas? How you doing?
My Christmas was good, man. Had a good time with family, good food, good company. My favorite part of Christmas is seeing other people, open their stuff. And I love giving people things. So it was a really good Christmas overall. We had a great time. So, started on Christmas Eve with the 49ers picking up a dominant win. Let's jump into it, man. First of all, how was your Christmas?
It was good. It was really good. Finally got those negative COVID tests Friday, just in time. So, went over, saw my family, saw the in-laws. It was really good. It was a bunch of fun, tons of presents, more than I was expecting. And yeah, I agree. Just getting people, seeing them open your gifts is really, really rewarding. And I think people kind of take that for granted, but it was nice. Still got to give my dad his gifts. So Dad, if you're watching, I will give you those as soon as I see you. With that all said, though, we got a Christmas gift a little early from the Niners, a 37-20 win over the Washington Commanders on Christmas Eve. It was a little tough in the first half. I think it was, if I remember correctly, 7-7 going into halftime after that really, really ugly Juwan Jennings tipped pass was intercepted. What was your kind of initial take on the game?
I thought it was a tale of two halves. I thought that there were struggles in the first. The 49ers only had the ball for 9 minutes and 48 seconds in that first half. I was a little worried about Brock Purdy simply because I'd seen, I think, 2 or 3 batted balls. And, it was one of those things where it was just like, oh, man, this is not looking good. And then, there was that one interception that I don't put on Purdy that was completely on Juwan Jennings, who has to catch that, even though, Eric Davis said, oh, that's on Purdy. I don't think so. That was crazy. He put it on his body. Like, you got to catch that. But it was a tale of two halves because the 49ers came out, if you would have told me under a Jimmy Garoppolo offense that the 49ers would be tied 7-7 going into the half with the Commanders, I'd be like, man, it's going to be tough sledding. Yeah. Under Brock Purdy, the 49ers came out and scored 30 second half points. Absolutely insane. So, at first I was worried in the first half. It's like it was like that meme, right? The first half got me and then the second half, it was overall a great game for the 49ers. Very, very impressed with how they were able to adjust at halftime and come out and really take the Commanders out of the game. I mean, to the point where it's Carson Wentz season now, apparently. Taylor Heineke wasn't getting it done. Carson Wentz back on the field.
Yeah, it's funny because the 49ers, not only do they physically beat up these teams they play, the Seahawks are the next team to lose after playing the Niners. I think teams are like 1-12 or something like that going into after this week. The Chiefs are the only team, and they had a bye week, if I remember correctly, to win after playing the 49ers. But they are also getting people benched and fired. I mean, we saw Matt Rule get fired after the 49ers just completely humiliated the Panthers at home, and Taylor Heineke got benched after halftime, which I actually don't think was that justified. I thought it was a really, really tough test to put your, I don't want to say journeyman quarterback, but kind of like, overachieving quarterback through. Hey, if you don't succeed against the number one overall defense, we're going to bench you. Like, come on, like let's calm down a little bit. And Carson Wentz, I don't think is the answer for them, but staying focused on the 49ers, I totally agree with you. 7-7 going into half. I was thinking maybe this is going to be a 14-10 type game. Really, really ugly defense, especially since the 49ers, they did play last Thursday. They had a little extra time, but it was completely different. And Brock Purdy just took the lid off in the second half. What impresses you the most about his performance?
I just think the fact that he hangs tough. He makes plays that other quarterbacks, the good ones make, and that we haven't seen in San Francisco for a while. I mean, the deep ball. And it was really weird. I think Kyle said after the game that it was Ray McCloud. He ran the right route, but George saw something in the middle of the field, so he sank deep. Just to be able to, see both of those guys get the ball to where it needs to go. And, that if you erase George Kittle, that's still a touchdown to Ray McCloud. That ball was put right exactly where it needed to be put. And really what impresses me the most, and I mean, I'm just going to talk about it right now. We both were talking about how, hey, maybe George Kittle is on the decline. Our boy Mike would come in here. Hey, maybe George Kittle's on the decline. Maybe they need to get out from under that contract. Well, he looks completely revamped with Brock Purdy. I think that it might be time to admit that maybe he might not necessarily be in decline. I think the relationship on the field between him and Jimmy Garoppolo was in decline because he's looked like an entirely different player with Brock Purdy back there. These last 2 weeks for him have been absolutely off the page. I mean, he comes in today, or I'm sorry, the other day in the game, 6 catches, 120 yards, another 2 touchdowns. I mean, he's been absolutely phenomenal. And I think that that's due to the fact that Brock Purdy is seeing these open guys in spaces. The thing that impresses me most about this game and a lot of other games from Brock Purdy is that he limits the amount of wide open guys that he just blatantly misses. He's got a couple here and there, but they might not necessarily have been the read. But when dudes are like open in the middle, he's hitting them. And it's a thing of beauty to watch.
I 100% agree. I mean, you've constantly brought up the Robert Saleh quote about Mike White. He makes the easy look easy, but that could definitely be said about what Brock Purdy has been able to do. And I know people have criticized, he has a lot of air under his ball. Look, he's getting the ball there. He's not putting it in harm's way.
That touchdown pass to George Kittle was on a rope, though.
That was a beauty. The one, I totally agree. Rafael Aguilar says, how's it going, fam? Hope you both had a great Christmas with your families. Got a 94 throwback Steve Young jersey to go along with the Niners win for Christmas. Wonderful.
Dude, I wanted that at the team store when we went to the Bucs game so bad, but they didn't have it. I would have picked that up in a second.
Merry Christmas to you and yours as well, Rafael. I don't want to say career resurgence, but definitely season resurgence of George Kittle. And I've kind of noticed this looking back over the past 2 years. Towards the end of November, December, he comes alive. Whatever it is, that's his time. I remember he had that 2-game stretch or 3-game stretch last year as well in Seattle, in Cincinnati, where he was just putting up ridiculous numbers. After Christmas Eve, the win on Christmas Eve, he now has tied his career high in receiving touchdowns. So I believe is 7, either or tied it or he surpassed it with 7 receiving touchdowns on the year. So really impressive stuff from George Kittle. And they say, a good tight end is a young quarterback's best friend. So I'm really not that surprised. You called it going into Tampa. You were like, George is going to be go off today. And it wasn't quite that game, but ever since that game, he's gone off. Unfortunately, kind of at the cost of a Brandon Ayuk no longer getting the rock as much. But he did have a nice catch and run Saturday.
So Kittle actually passed his career high. He's at 8 touchdown catches this season.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. So his previous was 7. Yeah. Really, really great stuff from George Kittle. And it's just great to see Brock Purdy. I think what amazes me the most about Brock Purdy is not only his calmness and his poise in the pocket, but his ability to see the field. Like he sees the field so well. And how many times, Matt, did we see clips going around of Jimmy Garoppolo patting the ball, struggling, and then dumping it off when Brandon Ayuk was 20 yards down the field, waving wide open? Like we don't see that with Brock Purdy. He gets it out. So
yeah, absolutely. He gets the ball out. He makes a decision. I think that the mental aspect of the game, particularly from him as a rookie, has been one of the most impressive things to me. I mean, he's very decisive. He knows where he wants to go. It's not a lot of wasted motion. He still does, a little bit of the things like when he's booting out, sometimes he'll turn his back on the line of scrimmage, which is something I don't necessarily like, but that's, part of the game or whatever. I think he's a little less athletic than people want to think. Athletic enough, but he was good. He was really good. And I think we're getting to the point now where if he keeps this up and they have a dominant playoff run, I mean, I don't want to ask the question yet, but there could be a question that needs to be asked, come training camp next season. He has played above and beyond what I thought he was capable of playing. And I'm really just ready to ride the wave as long as it's going to go on.
That's the perfect way to say it, because I've seen people already start to speculate what next year's going to look like, what teams should offer. Why don't we just calm down and enjoy it? Because rarely do we see this happen, especially with the 49ers. You know how many times, how many years have gone by where I see a rookie quarterback step in and play well and think, damn, why can't the 49ers ever have a rookie quarterback come in and do that. Well, they finally have it, and it wasn't Trey Lance in his second year. It was Brock Purdy. It is Brock Purdy. So shout out to Joey with the stats. He says Kittle in December games, 130 catches, 1,962 yards, and 12 touchdowns. When it matters most, he balls out. So shout out to Kittle. Yeah, a question here from Robert Davis. What did you think about Tyrion Davis Price in this game? I was like, meh.
I was like, meh too. It looks like another wasted third down pick. He had 9 carries for 30 yards. Didn't really look very strong. It's not the same violence we see Jordan Mason run with. And I got to say, when Jordan Mason on that initial kickoff went down, I saw them doing, they were pulling on his shin. They were doing like a kind of just like a Lockman test on the field or whatever, like the drawer test or whatever to check for an ACL. And I was like, shit, did he tear his ACL? And I was really worried for that. I know I saw him later in the game on special teams coming back in, which at that point made me really question why they weren't using him in the running game. Maybe they just wanted to see something from TDP. Maybe they wanted to give Mason a little bit of a rest, given that he had been nursing a hamstring injury. But it was one of those things where like I was worried about it, and I would have rather had Mason in there. TDP did not impress me at all. I think that it's going to be very similar to what happened with Trey Sermon, where we just not going to see a lot of him. He's going to be gone. They need to stop picking running backs in the third round. It doesn't work out for them at all. Just stick with your late round guys. It is what it is. You got a first rounder now with Christian McCaffrey. You have him for a few years. Just ride that wave as far as it goes.
Yeah, I agree. It was ugly, but to be completely fair, against a really, really tough defensive line, the Washington Commanders. And besides Ray, nobody really had a good rushing performance. So while I wasn't impressed with TDP at all, hopefully it was just, who he was facing.
And that's part of it too. Washington Commanders coming into this game are the number 4 ranked defense in the NFL. So you kind of expect tough sledding going in. Christian McCaffrey was limited to 3.1 yards a carry on 15 totes. Ray did have that touchdown. It was like, that's like one of those gadget plays that just happened to hit. The 49ers, I believe, if I'm looking it up, had 153 yards rushing. 71 of them came on that one run by Ray McLeod. It was nice to see him make an impact. Like his speed was very impressive getting out into the open field. It's one of those things where you come up against a good defense. They want to shut you down. But the difference between a Brock Purdy and a Jimmy Garoppolo, and I'm getting to the point where I think that Brock Purdy is better than Jimmy Garoppolo in that the 49ers were able to keep passing the ball. Brock Purdy was 15 of 22, and I think 3 of those passes were batted down. So, they could end up 3 of them were batted down, and one of them, again, was spot on to Juwan Jennings, who just dropped the ball, popped it up in the air, and then it was an interception. So you're talking about a quarterback who, as far as I'm concerned, didn't put the ball in danger. I didn't see any throw that I was like, oh, God, that's not a good throw. I thought he played well overall, to the point that, to what you said earlier about Ayuk kind of being disappeared. Ayuk had 5 catches for 81 yards. Mm-hmm. And I don't think we realized that because George Kittle just went off so much that it was just like, oh, okay.
Yeah, that's true.
It was just one of those things. Christian McCaffrey only had 2 catches for 12 yards. Purdy made the plays that he absolutely had to have. And for me, that's very important. And it's something that separates him from Jimmy Garoppolo, being able to work, all the stats that are out there. The 49ers, when trailing after X whatever, are 2 and 58 or whatever it is. And that's largely Jimmy Garoppolo's inability to lead a team on a comeback. Brock Purdy started the slate in the second half with, clean, and they outscored the Washington Commanders 30-13. So that's a big one for me.
Yeah, that was really huge, especially going into half, like we said, tied 7-7. A couple comments here. Jesus says, didn't Jimmy play well in 2017's first 5 starts? That's what earned him the contract. I say earned in air quotes. But yep, he did. Ian Sharp can't get Mitchell back soon enough.
Wait, what? I want to address that though. He did, but Jesus, the difference is at that point, Jimmy was like a 5-year pro. Mm-hmm. Brock Purdy's a rookie. Okay. It's a little bit different. And it very well could be that Brock Purdy comes down to earth as teams get more tape on him or whatever. But if you line up Jimmy Garoppolo's 2017 with I mean, it was like a 1-9 roster when he took over, a 1-10 roster when he finally got the start, versus this team that has playoff expectations, and you're handing it over to Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick in the draft, as a rookie, a guy who's barely 6 feet tall, who doesn't have, a huge arm, the one that's coming in who was the third stringer to start the season. I mean, for him to come out and what he's done in the last 3 starts plus is something that is literally unheard of. The 49ers are on their third quarterback of the season, and half of this 8-game winning streak you can directly attribute to Brock Purdy's quarterback play.
Yeah.
That's
crazy
unheard
stuff.
of.
Yeah. I mean, just to remind you guys, a Mr. Irrelevant, which is the last overall pick, I'm sure you all know, in the draft, has never even completed a pass in an NFL game before. And Brock Purdy's out here doing literally historical things. So I agree with you there. Ian Sharp says Mitchell can't get back quick enough. And I have some quotes here from Kyle Shanahan from his press conference. He said Elijah Mitchell's making good progress. He's getting much closer to returning. So that's promising. Hopefully, if he's getting ready to return, just hold him out for the playoffs at this point. I think the 49ers should be able to make do against the Raiders and the Cardinals without Elijah Mitchell. And I'm going to even say Deebo Samuel, who I forget which comment here was talking about Deebo was almost back as well. Kyle Shanahan mentioned today that, he'll see how the next couple of days go with rehab. I think there's a chance possibly later in the week to have him back at practice, but they'll see. Does that timeline go along with what he suffered, the injury he suffered against Tampa, Matt?
It's hard to say. I think that it's clear that this MCL sprain wasn't as severe as the first one that caused him to miss, I believe 9 weeks was the first one that he missed. This one is going to be more like 4 or 5 weeks, but it obviously wasn't as severe the second time around. I just hope that when he comes back, those MCLs healed thicker or something, but because I worry about him and his durability, given that he's been injured both seasons he's been here. But when he has been here and has been on the field, he's been super explosive. So I'm very excited to have him back out there. I think that just gives us an extra layer. If we can go into a game with Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and Jordan Mason as guys that you can tote the rock with, I think in the playoffs when it's getting cold and you need those yards and it's tough sledding, that you just, you can run the ball at your pace. We weren't able to do that against Washington. And I think a large part of that was because beyond Christian McCaffrey, who, if you notice, Christian McCaffrey will start out, he's the focus, right? He starts a little slow. Jordan Mason comes in late, third quarter situations, and he'll start softening up the defense. That's kind of already a little tired because he's more physical. Then they'll bring Christian back in, and that's when you see the 10, the 11, the 13-yard run. So they're kind of complementary. I think that if you can have 3 of those guys back there that do that sort of thing, you're going to have 3 guys that are averaging 4, 5, 6 yards a pop. And in the playoffs, ball control is what it's all about. Ball control and defense. You do that in a wide open NFC, given the Jalen Hurts injury. I mean, that's all the 49ers could ask for. That literally is the ticket to the Super Bowl right there.
Yeah, really well said. I think that would be huge for the 49ers to have just that trio of backs, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and Jordan Mason, just proven backs, basically, that you can have success with on the running game. Reading some more comments here. Ian Sharp, Purdy will win Kyle Coach of the Year award. I unfortunately, while I agree with you, think it's gone already to Nick Sirianni. I know NFL Network put together their polling, and Nick Sirianni won it in their internal poll. I don't know what that means as far as the NFL awards. Do you think there's any shot Kyle gets it, Matt?
I think that with the polling, it looks like it's going to be Nick Sirianni, which is unfortunate because I think that Nick Sirianni has a really good team and he did a really good job developing Jalen Hurts, and that's all fine and well. But again, what Kyle is doing with his third quarterback, who is Mr. Irrelevant, who is responsible for half of this 8-game winning streak, is unheard of, unprecedented, never happened before in the NFL. And I think when you have those type of situations, you have to recognize that coach, that player, whatever the case is, in that light. It reminds me of, I think it was Mike Trout's second season in Major League Baseball. He had this phenomenal season, right? But Miguel Cabrera had the first triple crown in Major League Baseball in over 50 years. So Miguel Cabrera won the MVP. as he rightly should have. Maybe Trout was a better player at that point, and I don't even think that's arguable. He was. What Cabrera did was, unheard of for over 5 decades, and I think that those type of things make a huge difference. So, to me, that's something that's important. Real quick, Emiliano says, for me, I'm going to need a larger sample size from TDP before I start saying he's the next Sermon. Let's not act like CMC has huge yards per average rushing. He's averaging 4.6 on the season, I believe. In the last, for the regular season, 4.6 yards a carry. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
And by the way, he only needs 27 more yards to be the 49ers' first 1,000-yard back in however long. I know half the season was with Carolina, but still.
That's nice. That's nice. Let's see. Going into some more of these comments, I feel like the Commanders' defense didn't respect Ray enough with the sweep for the touchdown, too. If it were Debo, I think they would have been more vigilant. Yeah, Montez Sweat was right on him. Yeah, that was a crazy.
By the way, that was impressive, the way that Montez Sweat came across the formation when Ray crossed the goal line. Montez Sweat was right there. For a big dude like Sweat, who's like 280, that's super impressive for him to
basically
be able to
stride for
almost
stride.
Run that play down.
Yeah. Eric, KB caught the hard ones too, but dropped the easy ones. Look at him now. He was,
Yeah, there was another comment in here. Oh, it's the next one. We'll get to it. But yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. Emiliano says that wasn't a perfect pass. That was laid at his hip, hit his hand. So JJ should have caught the ball, but the pass wasn't in stride. It was like Trey slanted Debo in Arizona that everyone complained about.
I have 2 words for you. Catch radius. Not every ball is going to be exactly perfect. And the fact that it was on his hip means that it was inside the confines of his body. That's completely on Juwan Jennings. That's a perfectly fine pass. That's 100% on Juwan Jennings.
Yeah. Not only that, I mean, a high school coach will tell you if the ball hits your hands, you're supposed to catch it. And the ball hit his hands not once, but twice or 3 times, however many times it actually hit his hands. So it wasn't a perfect pass, but it was a catchable pass, especially I don't know if it was on a 3rd down or not, but it gave the ball right to the Commanders in the red zone, basically, and they were able to capitalize and got 7 on it. This is something I really want to talk about. Jesus, secondary giving up big plays, not good.
I would classify it. I mean, I guess Diamador Lenore did get mossed by Terry McLaurin, or no, it was Dotson, and then gave up another deep one to Terry McLaurin. But the big problem for me is everybody's golden child, Talanoa Hufanga. Dude he has fallen off. He has fallen off. I'm sorry. He made plays early. He makes plays. He's good against the run. He's a very physical player, but he's capped physically, and his decision-making is not very good. It looks like his mental process on the field is a little bit slow, if I'm being completely honest. This is the 3rd game that I've seen him, when the ball is snapped, at the line of scrimmage, still pointing guys out, and then he's caught flat-footed. Okay? The real clincher for me was 4 weeks ago when they played Miami, and he bit on the underneath route with knowing that he was the deep coverage with Tyreek Hill and single coverage on the other side. That's poor decision making, and I really worry about that. I would really, really like to see him develop, and I'm not, casting him off, but when I say falling off, I mean that like he had like this historic couple of first weeks. Everybody was like, oh, this and this and that. The first couple of weeks have carried him to a Pro Bowl, right? He's had picks and stuff. Hung fat, I'm with you. He's having a bad stretch. It's just one of those things where he's having a little bit of regression, and he's a 2nd-year guy. I'm not expecting him to be, the best player ever in his 2nd year, but I think that, Scott in our chat was perfect with his comparison where he's like, man, he's like a less athletic Jamal Adams. He's just not very good in coverage. And I agree with that assessment. He's not very good in coverage. He's great at being a box safety, but when you ask him to be that center fielder, I've seen too many plays where he takes the wrong angle. And even in this Washington game, beyond the goal line touchdown that was completely on him, where the guy was let wide open right behind him, there was that play where he rushed the passer, Taylor Heineke, and he like over pursued. And Taylor Heineke was able to get away and complete a pass. It was just one of those things where he has to make guesses because of his lack of athleticism. And right now he's guessing wrong, whereas early in the season he was guessing right. Zach, I don't know what you're seeing, but what do you think of how Hufanga's been playing? And largely it's the young guys in the secondary. How do you think they've been playing?
It's definitely problematic. Hufanga, I think you said it perfectly to end your wrap up of it. your assessment, I guess I should say, is earlier in the year, he was gambling and those gambles were paying off. The second half or the last 3, 4, 5 games, they haven't been paying off. They've been going against him. He's been losing those bets, and he's been getting a little exposed. The deep passes, jumping early, shorter underneath routes to allow a receiver like Tyreek Hill get behind him. Literally sitting halfway through the end zone and allowing a receiver to go right behind him. Like, these are things that you simply cannot allow.
Like when we were at the Bucks game, it didn't count because of a hold, but I mean that Mike Evans' blown coverage was completely on Hufanga.
Yeah, it happens at least once a game. It's like the Jimmy blunder of the boneheaded throw right to a linebacker has now turned into the Hufanga blunder where he's just caught flat-footed sitting on his ass as a receiver blows by him. And it's unfortunate because he is a fan favorite, and yes, he does, get the crowd excited and he makes big plays. But it's almost not to that quite extent, but turning into like a Trayvon Diggs situation where it's, feast or famine. He's either going to get a pick six or he's going to allow a touchdown. And, it's kind of turning into that sort of situation, not to that extent, not to that extreme level,
but I mean, I'm sure you feel like me in that it's one thing to do this in the regular season, but in the playoffs where one possession could be the difference between winning and losing, that one blunder a game could mean that the 49ers go home.
Mm-hmm. He told he was on Richard Sherman's podcast, I think after the Tampa game, and Richard Sherman basically told him, figure it out now, because for damn sure when you get into the postseason, these teams are going to see what you're making these mistakes at consistently, and they're going to attack you then. So I'm hoping that advice sticks in his head, because he really does need to figure it out now.
And I think it's a great job. I mean, and I know he's technically a former player now, but not every player / former player would be that upfront about it. Yeah. Richard Sherman, I think it's really weird. Richard Sherman in retirement seems like he's not as big a fan of the Seahawks organization.
No,
I feel like he gives more love towards the 49ers organization. And really does a good job of like reaching out to these players. The fact that he was able to say, hey, you need to figure this out now, and was upfront about it rather than being like, oh, you get it, dude. Oh, you got this. You got this. The fact that he was actually offering up mentorship is super important to me. And Talanoa has a wonderful personality. I'm sure he's going to work on it. It's just that right now it's too many times. Yeah. It's like I think the Dolphins Packers game yesterday. They were calling so many penalties. I was like, ref, I'm seeing you too much times on my screen. Same thing with Hufanga. It's like, I'm seeing you late to coverage. I'm seeing you blowing coverage too many times. Yep. 2 or 3, 4 times a season, fine. Every game, not good, bro.
No. I agree. There's a comment here from Ian Sharp. They miss Emmanuel Mosley, which I 100% agree with. They miss Mosley.
Absolutely.
Mooney Ward has been taken out of the game for the last 2 to 3 games for periods at a time. He was able to return this past game. He was suffering with nausea, which is that related to a concussion that he supposedly passed? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he could have ate something bad, but that is kind of worrisome, particularly given the news today that Tua had his like 3rd concussion of the season.
Yeah.
And we saw it was a tale of 2 halves with Tua. Like that 4th quarter for him was dreadful. I mean, absolutely blew that game, and you worry about it, right? When he went to the blue tent and then went to the back, and we were just like, oh man, another concussion. That's something to worry about, particularly after Mosley tore his ACL. It's like, are we going to have to rock with, Diamador Lenore and Ambry Thomas? That's, I think those guys have potential, but good Lord, that would have been a tough ask. But, he was able to come back. I think he's still, Ward is a great player. Don't get me wrong. I would like to see him cut down on the holding though. Like he's had a few holding penalties this year, and they might call that more in the playoffs. We can't be giving up like DPIs and holds. It's giving them too many second opportunities. But overall, he's been the best player in the secondary, not named Jimmy Ward.
Yeah, 100%. And I know a lot of people were saying like, guys, it's going to be okay. Washington has one of the best wide receiver cores in the NFL. And I'm thinking to myself, like, what do you think happens when you get into the playoffs? Do you think the Eagles with Devontae Smith,
right? Devontae Smith, AJ Brown,
or what about the Vikings with Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson? Like that's what you're going to face. So you need to figure it out now. You need to get Mooney, Ward, Samuel Womack, Ambry Thomas, Diamond Lenore. They need to figure it out, get on track, fix whatever problems they're having now, because there's only 2 games left. And then now you go into facing the best of the best. And I guess the first round, maybe you're not facing, maybe it's a Green Bay, maybe it's a Washington, maybe it's the Giants. I don't know, where you're not facing elite receivers. But if you're trying to go all the way, which this team, in my honest opinion, has the capability to do, you need to be able to defend the best receiving cores. And that's what they're going to have to go up against. So I really hope it doesn't come back to bite them, because that's really looking like the only soft spot on this defense. And I think they're a little too reliant on the front 4 getting pressure to where they don't have to worry about defending for 5, 6, 7 seconds.
I did see another mistake from Fred Warner. I want to address that too. There was that touchdown play where Fred Warner leaped for the ball and was short. But the fact of the matter is that I don't think there was an eligible receiver within 15 yards of Fred Warner. And he was sunk down so low, and it was a goal to go type play where he needed to sink another 3-4 yards, and he had a chance to pick that ball. So, Fred, again, I think he's a little lackluster in coverage, but I don't want to let that go either. But yeah, I agree with you. The secondary is the most concerning right now. Let's address Eric's comment. You want to start with that one?
Yeah. So Eric, can I ask, how are you feeling if you're Trey Lance? We've seen him being extremely supportive, dapping up Brock Purdy, smiling, hugging him when the 49ers wrapped up the division in Seattle. There's those pictures that came out. He's embracing him in the locker room. And I genuinely think he's happy for Brock Purdy. He's supportive. Brock Purdy's given a ton of credit to Trey and Jimmy for teaching him a lot this year. And I 100% agree. The only scenario in which Trey Lance does not get the keys to the franchise back starting next year is if they win it all with Brock Purdy. If he continues to play this way, they end up with the 6th ring and Brock Purdy's a Super Bowl champion. Any other scenario outside of that, I think Trey Lance should feel pretty comfortable. Hopefully this lights an even bigger fire under him, as if there already wasn't another one being compared to Jimmy Garoppolo and inheriting a successful team. But I'd actually be a little nervous. I'm not going to lie. If I'm Trey Lance and I continuously see my backup, a kid who was taken way later than I was, going out there and having a lot of success, something that, yes, it was a short amount of time, but I wasn't able to do. What do you think, Matt? How do you think he's feeling?
I think he is very gracious, and I think that's due to the fact that, again, I believe he's still the youngest guy on the team. Brock Purdy is actually older than Trey Lance, despite the fact that, Brock Purdy's played 4 years in college. So I think he's about 6 or 7 months older, if I'm not mistaken. But if I'm Trey Lance, yeah, I'm being gracious. I'm doing all this stuff. But in my mind, it's like, I can't wait to get back on the football field. If Trey Lance is the competitor that we think he is, then he's going to want to get to that quarterback coach, the one that's going to, help him, again, as we quote Robert Saleh, make easy look easy. And, the fact that Brock Purdy is doing all this stuff and is making Trey Lance's job a little bit more difficult, to quote the great Jocko Willink, good. If you have fire, if you have passion, if you're the guy that we need to lead the franchise, then you're going to look at that and it's going to light a fire under you. It's going to get your competitive juices going. You're going to want to come back next season and be like, as good as Brock Purdy was, watch me be better. That's exactly what you want to happen. And so, hopefully Trey Lance has that type of mindset. I feel like he is a very hard worker from all things that we've heard. Purdy is a hard worker too. It seems like both of those guys are around, where Jimmy goes off to Chicago and is like, nah, nobody can touch me. Nobody can talk to me. Nobody can do this and that. That wild story about him signing his contract and then ghosting the franchise, and they couldn't even find him for like 6 weeks. That doesn't seem to be happening with these young men. They seem to be very much into the hard work. There was a story that I think Matt Mayoko interviewed Kyle Juszczyk. And it was one of those things where Kyle Juszczyk is, some of these rookies, you don't want them coming in and being loud and this and this, that. Brock Purdy keeps his nose down. He works hard, blah, blah, blah. That's, he got out there, he proved it on the field. And that's why he has the cachet to tell the veterans in the huddle to, shut up. We got stuff to do. And you want that from your quarterbacks. Trey Lance, you want him to have that too. If he's not, then guess what? Brock Purdy's still here and there's an avenue to go. But the fact, rising tide raises all boats. So Brock Purdy being this good should light a fire under Trey Lance and make Trey Lance that much better because he knows what he's up against now.
Yeah, I actually 100% agree with that. And I think that how do I put this? Trey Lance was going into this year, and the entire plan was Jimmy Garoppolo. He said goodbye back in January, February, and he was supposed to be gone. And it was supposed to be Trey, you're unquestioned starter. We're giving everything to you. And there's a lot of pressure in the sense that you need to perform, but there wasn't any pressure in the sense that you might lose your job. Now there's that pressure as well. So I'm hoping that that little bit of extra pressure is enough to push him. And competition brings out the best in everyone. So if you go into next season and Brock Purdy, however this year ends, is as six, has all of this success with him after a 1.5 year stint, that is enough to make Trey Lance second guess himself or question, hey, am I that good? And you need to prove it. Just like you said, Jocko, good. Oh, things aren't going as well. Somebody else is playing better than you. Good. That's an opportunity for you to go out and play even better than him. So I just think, yes, you should be a little nervous, but as a fan and the 49ers coaching staff, that should be exactly what you want, because you don't want somebody going in there thinking there's no way I can lose my job, even if I stink it up for the next 6 weeks, no, you can't lose your job. There's a kid behind you who we took way later than you and had a lot of success, and the stadium was already chanting his name, and the teammates love him, and he got a bunch of media love. Like, I'm not saying it to make him afraid or nervous, but just keep that in mind. So I want to address
Absolutely. We got a comment. Yeah, we got a Pitties and the STI. You guys are ridiculous talking like I'm assuming you mean the defense is trash, even though they're number one in the stats. Listen, bringing up where things can go wrong is not being ridiculous or talking like the defense is trash. But go ahead and go back and look at the tape and tell me how Talanoa Hufanga hasn't made one mistake in coverage every single game in the last 4 weeks.
Yeah. And we're literally saying this is the Achilles heel, aka
right.
This is like their one weakness. Yeah, like they're
right.
The stats don't show everything. So if you're only going off the stats, then you're not going to get a full picture.
Right.
How many deep passes?
And like we said, it's one thing to be in the regular season and be number one, and then be going against. I mean, this one play in a Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes, right?
Yeah.
We talk about
3rd and 18 or 3rd and 23, whatever it was. Yeah.
Right. Or the deep ball to to what's his face that we traded for. I'm blanking on the name.
Torrey Smith.
We got the wide receiver that we got in the 2019 Super Bowl when Jimmy missed him deep.
Oh, Emmanuel Sanders.
There we go. Thank you. That one play could change the entire complexion of the game. So those things in the playoffs matter. I'm not talking trash like they're bad. No, they're the number one defense in the NFL, but nobody's perfect. And if we're looking at it objectively, there's some stuff that they can lock up. And that's one of the things that they can lock up. So,
And any coach will tell you, not that I'm a coach, but there's always something to improve upon. You're never perfect. You're never going to put on the tape and say, there's nothing you have to improve upon. You're good. Even the number one defense has things to improve upon. And it's not unwarranted, because you have to remember, Emmanuel Mosley went down. Jason Verrett went down. Mooney Ward missed a period of this game. Like, it makes sense that they're going to struggle in areas where they're playing second and third stringers extended periods of time against really, really good opposing receivers. So it makes sense. And they just need to coach it up, fix it up, whatever they can do to tighten up that secondary, because if not, the defense is in for a long day. I mean, that's literally the only way, aside from the turnover, that Washington was able to stay in this game, was a few deep passes that get them back in scoring.
Right. Well, and here's the thing, John Chapman put out the grades for the defensive players against the Commanders, right? Other than Ambry Thomas, who was graded on 6 snaps, the lowest graded players in the 49ers defense, 3 out of the 4 were secondary players. Tashawn Gibson was a 55.7. Hufanga was a 54.2. Womack was a 51.8. That's not going to get it done. So pointing out a weakness, and even number one people have a weakness, right? I mean, hell, Superman's weakness is kryptonite. We all know that. Everybody has a weakness. And for us, it's that secondary. So pointing that out is not talking trash. It's just being realistic.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, it's not us talking crap. We're just saying this is an area they need to fix, to improve upon, in order to really contend for a Super Bowl.
Yeah. Niner Gang Podcast, our boy. Looks like we got a casual fan in here. We got the win. Don't complain. That's exactly correct. That is exactly correct. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Thank you for pointing that out, Dion. Yeah. We appreciate you.
We have a super chat in here.
Dion's exactly right. This is exactly what again, I have to say this for the 50th time. We're not going to be like those blind fans that are just, knobbing on the team for everything they do. We're going to be objective and we're going to keep it real. And there are areas where the team can improve. That's 100%.
Yeah. We have a super chat from Gray Fox. Hearing the whole stadium chant Purdy's name, I was one of them in the Bucs game, should light a fire under Lance. He knows he still needs to earn his spot. I'm rooting for both of them.
Gray Fox, you got to reach out to us next time, brother. Could have came out and had a drink with us, my friend.
Yeah, that's right. We were at that game as well.
We were there.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. Thank you for the super chat, by the way. You're exactly right. That should light a fire under any competitor. And I choose to believe that Lance is a competitor.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. Either way, one thing is for sure, the Jimmy G era is over.
100% true. They're going to let him walk. It's not even a question now.
Yeah. And it's almost like, I don't want to say he was holding the team ransom, but it was like, hey, you guys have no success without me. You really going to let me go? Like, come on. And the 49ers were thinking like, shit, we might actually have to keep, like, he's right. He's right. And then Purdy comes in and he's like, see ya. Like, I'm going to come out here and not only do what you've been doing, but more. I'm going to open up the offense. I'm going to have more touchdowns of 25 yards plus than you've had in your entire stint here in 4 or 5 games. Like what he's been doing. Again, I hate to stay on this, but it really is unreal when you think about it for a little, for a little longer. Just it's so impressive that he's been able to come in here and not just maintain, but actually elevate the offense. And sorry, Jimmy, but thanks, but no thanks. We appreciate your tenure here, but best of luck elsewhere. We now have Brock Purdy, and if Brock Purdy for some reason doesn't work out, we got Trey Lance. If Trey Lance doesn't work out, we got Brock Purdy, vice versa. So.
Absolutely, I think that's true. Emiliano says Trey Lance seems consistent in his thinking / behavior since day one. If I'm wondering about anyone's mindset in a general sense, it's Zach Wilson, because things he had control over changed drastically. First of all, I thought him in that interview saying like his decision making was his superpower was hilarious. But Zach, if you can find it, I think there's one video that's even more hilarious in one sense and very telling in another. And that was from the day of the draft when he was taking pictures. I think we all know the meme, but I actually do think it's very important if you can find it. But yeah, Zach Wilson's already been ruled as inactive for this week, which is wild. They've already said, no, we're done.
The tweet here has been deleted, but let me see if I could find it.
Yeah.
I know which one. I know exactly which one you're talking about. Here we go.
We'll find it.
I got it here. Let me switch the screen. Cool.
We'll put it up there real quick because I think it's very telling. This video, and it's from, there we go. So if you want to replay that one.
It's not the best quality, but that's the only one.
No, it's not the best quality video, but look how uncomfortable he looks in that situation. He's like, oh boy, what do I do? What do I do? Did the eyes darting back and forth? It's somebody that's not even a pressure packed situation. And look how scared he looked in that moment. Like, where do I stand? What do I do? That's a guy who is in his head too much. And I think that Zach Wilson's issues are 100% between his ears.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Unfortunately for Robert Saleh, that looks like a mega bust of a pick.
I'm surprised they're moving off that quickly, to be honest, but I think they have to.
I'm not, dude. This looks to me, it's like I guess the Jets are where quarterbacks go to die, but it looks a lot like what happened with Sam Darnold with the whole seeing ghosts thing. There's something about the mental makeup that you're just like, it's not going to work. Yeah. And I think that that's a lot. All these quarterbacks are talented, that you have to be talented to make it to the NFL. I think we're looking at it now. And whereas last year you would have been like, oh man, Mac Jones looks like he's the best of the bunch, right? With maybe Justin Fields, who's athletic. And then the rest we just don't know about, right? Now it's like, okay, clearly Trevor Lawrence is the best of the bunch because he's been killing it this last month and a half. He's been like on fire. And it's like Mac Jones is falling off and he doesn't look like he looked like he's been capped and everybody's figured him out and he doesn't have enough. He doesn't look like he's going to work for the Patriots. I mean, they already want Bailey Zappi to come back in, Patriots fans, that is. And then you look at Justin Fields, who, yes, still super athletic, but very raw as a passer. Trey Lance book still out. Zach Wilson looks like an unmitigated disaster. Second only, I think, to maybe Josh Rosen as a quarterback who's just been abjectly just terrible. Maybe Jamarcus Russell, but he's on that short list, and it's unfortunate, but it's very, very clear that Zach Wilson is going to be a bust. So he's going to take his $35 million guaranteed and adios out of the league, I think.
The stats that people were putting up for Zach Wilson and Jamarcus Russell were almost identical. I'm going to share them here. And we're not going to stay on this too long because I know it was a 49ers podcast, but I just, as somebody who was really high on Zach Wilson, I'm still like almost in like bewildered. Zach Wilson passer rating 70.7. This is the first 20 starts. Jamarcus Russell 70.6. Touchdowns to interceptions 13-16. Zach Wilson 15-13. Jamarcus Russell. Completion percentage 55.6. Zach Wilson 52.1. Jamarcus Russell. Yards per attempt 6.3 for Wilson, 6.2 for Russell. Win-loss 8-12, 6-14. Like just insanely bad. Jamarcus Russell widely regarded as the biggest bust in NFL history, and Zach Wilson's putting up identical numbers.
Yeah. And the thing that they both share is one really dominant season in college and big arms. Yep. And people will fall in love with those every day of the week. I got to shout out our guy in the Hive and on the 49ers Faithful podcast with Brandon. I got to shout out Christian because he's been on it. You know, he's a big Utah fan in college. He lives in Utah. So he saw a lot of BYU and he was like, dude, this guy makes bad decisions. I'm telling you, don't believe this season. He didn't play any Power 5 schools. And when he plays Power 5 schools, he doesn't do good. And he was absolutely spot on the money. Yeah. So shout out to Christian for that. But Zach Wilson looks like a disaster. Speaking of a disaster, boy, oh boy. The Las Vegas Raiders are next up on the docket for the 49ers. Yeah. We'll get into our preview show later in the week, so stay tuned for that. But, I mean, this is not looking good for the for the Raiders, I should say. 49ers, Kyle Shanahan came in the press conference after the win against the Commanders and basically insinuated, hey, we're going to keep going for this thing. We don't know if we're going to be number 2. We don't know if we're going to be number 1, which there's an outside shot of if the Philadelphia Eagles lose out and the Vikings lose one and the 49ers can win out. Not likely, but possible. Shanahan said, and I quote, "You can't turn football on and off." What do you make of that, Zach? Are they going to go for the throat here for the rest of the season?
I think 100% they are. And I think they're right to do so because that's a perfect quote. You can't turn football on and off. You can't just say, hey, guys, we have this 8, 9, 10 game winning streak. Or I guess right now, let's say 8 games. Right now, 8 game winning streak. You're doing great. Let's pause this. Let's put in our backups, allow them to do whatever you want to do. And then in 2 to 3 weeks, we'll come back and pick this back up. It's almost why you see all these first round bye teams go one and done. Because as hot as they are going into the postseason, it almost disrupts the chemistry. It disrupts the ball rolling. It disrupts everything you got going on that you've been building for the past 2 to 3 months. And it just, I don't know. It's hard for me to imagine being able to just pause that. Don't get me wrong. Injured teams definitely can use that bye week to get healthy. But what's 1 week really going to do? You know what I mean? Like, so I would almost rather they go in rolling. The best thing about this postseason, the way it's looking, they're not going to be road dogs the way they were last year, sneaking in as the 6th seed, having to go on the road to Dallas, on the road to Green Bay, on the road to LA. Like, that's very easy to run out of momentum. They're at the very least going to host everybody besides Minnesota and Philly. So what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's spot on the money. You know, I think they have the right attitude. Not turning football on and off, as Kyle Shanahan said. And if you watch the video of Fred Warner breaking down the team inside the locker room at the end of the day, he said, look, as far as I'm concerned, we're 1-0. Let's come out next week and try to be 1-0 again. and taking it game by game, I think is the right attitude. So, this team is locked in. And like you said, that week off can almost be detrimental. It can almost kill your momentum. I would almost like the 49ers to kind of stop it too, right? Where you take one of the worst teams. Even 3 is not bad, because as it stands right now, I think they'd be playing the Giants, who do not scare me in the slightest. So yeah, you're looking at it from, and if you're talking about a Minnesota Washington, game for 2 versus 7 or 2 versus 6 or whatever, 2 versus 7, I think would be the first one. Again, it's one of those things where it's just like, I mean, they've shown they can whoop up on Washington. I don't know if Kirk Cousins is good enough to overcome Washington. There are a lot of holes on that Minnesota team. So I'm not scared of anybody in the playoffs on the NFC side, except maybe a fully healthy Philadelphia team. I think they would give the 49ers a little bit of trouble. Everybody else is just like, let's just add wood to the fire and watch it grow. The AFC is where I'm worried more about teams, but if we're worrying about AFC teams, it's because we reached the Super Bowl, and that in and of itself is a great problem to have as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, 100% agree. Speaking of the Eagles being fully healthy or not, they just lost guard Lane Johnson for the foreseeable future, definitely the rest of the year, probably going into the postseason as well. Huge loss for them. Jalen Hurts is already dealing with a separated shoulder or whatever the hell he's got going on. We'll see how serious that is going into the postseason. He already missed this week. I believe he's going to miss next week as well. And Minnesota, you were talking about them being potentially frauds. They've had 11 one-score games. This year, they're 11-0. They had almost as many last year, and they weren't obviously undefeated. I think that's the difference. The ball bounced a different way this year. They're just as fraudulent as they were last year, in my opinion. And I don't even think they made the playoffs last year, but this year I'm not afraid of them. Yes, they can put up points. Oh, we came back, down 33. We got it. Bro, you were down 33. You were
down 33 to the goddamn Colts. Yeah.
Come on. Yeah, that's not happening against the 49ers. That defense is not giving up 33 points in the second half. Some more comments here. Emiliano, speaking of turning on and off football, I have a feeling that this is seriously affecting Deshaun Watson. He looked quite different since his return to the NFL playing field. Dude's been out for like 2 years, so it's going to take some time. Kyle Shanahan talked about George Kittle needing to get back into football shape. That's going to be probably the rest of this year, going into next year, for Deshaun Watson to get back into football shape, get back into used to the speed of the game.
Yeah, this season is getting back into shape for Massage Watson. I mean, he's gonna have to have time to figure out how to get himself into shape without predating on women. So, sorry, dude. Like, as far as I'm concerned, Deshaun Watson's a piece of shit. So
I agree.
I'm gonna give him no love. But from a strictly football perspective, if you're a player and you've missed the better part of 2 years, it's going to take you time to get back into shape. So hopefully he keeps tripping over himself and being a complete piece of shit. And I hope he's out of the league.
Yeah, well said. I don't disagree with that at all. Before we wrap up the show, we got to shout out to our sponsor, Mybookie. Guys, I know Monday Night Football's already started, but they got the 49ers playing the Raiders this week. There's a ton of other games, obviously. I think last Thursday was the last Thursday night game, if I remember correctly. So no more Thursday night football. But you can still bet on the 49ers to win against the Raiders. We know football. We watch football. We love football. Why don't you make some money while doing it? I won my bet plus 450 Saturday. I needed George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey touchdown. Man, I was getting pretty pressed towards the end of the game there, but luckily Christian McCaffrey got the ball and ran it in, hit that parlay. You guys could be winners as well with MyBookie. Head over to Mybookie.ag and use promo code HIVE when you sign up. Get your first deposit of $50 or more instantly matched. Go take advantage of our double deposit bonus, only now through the end of the year. So take advantage while you can. Shout out to MyBookie, guys. Thank you very much for sponsoring the show. You guys know you can bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie.
And that includes this Thursday, because there is a Thursday game. It's the Dallas Cowboys and the Tennessee Titans.
All right. Yeah, all right. I love it. More Thursday night football. The 49ers, just to wrap this show up, have a legitimate shot of ending the season on a 10-game winning streak. How wild is that, Matt, considering they were 3-4 9 weeks ago?
It's again, Kyle came out after they were 3-4, maybe 4-4 going into the bye. where he said, hey, we're one game better than last year. I mean, last year they were 3-5 and were able to, I believe they finished 10-6.
Mm-hmm.
And we're
10
able
and
to make the
7.
playoffs. 10-7, and we're able to make the playoffs. So for me, it's one of those situations where they're kind of repeating history, but they're doing it at an improved level. And to me, it is wild. I still think that the last game of the season is going to be one of those weird ones where it's like, if they can't do any better than they're already doing, do they maybe rest some guys to get ready for the wild card round? It's going to be interesting to see, but I think it's going to be full tilt, full go against the Las Vegas Raiders. I think that, Kyle is going to want to stick it to a, I would say now at this point, former rival, considering they've left the immediate area. But 49ers and Raiders fans don't have any love for each other. I think that he's going to take that into account. I think he's going to take into account, that the 2 seed at the very least is within range, if not the 1 seed. So I think he's going to keep his foot on the gas for now, and I think they're going to go in there and absolutely do business with the Las Vegas Raiders. I think Tipico Sportsbook has the 49ers as a 5-point favorite right now on the road. So that should tell you a lot.
Yeah. I think the 49ers definitely could take care of business this week. And just like Kyle Shanahan said, his comments there have absolutely everything to play for: seeding, staying hot. So I don't think they're going to lay off the gas. Not to mention, Brock Purdy needs the experience still. Yes, he's been playing well, but he's still a very inexperienced rookie quarterback. So get him all the playing time he can get, meaningful football, because that's very important if you want him to succeed against the best of the best. I know we're wrapping up, but I just needed to share this quote. It's wild. I just saw it. Grant Cohn asked Kyle Shanahan today who the starting quarterback would be next year. And Kyle said, I don't even know what year it is until after the season is over. I'm trying to think about how to get them ready for Wednesday, man. So that's a great question. Honestly, I don't look ahead like that. We got a number of big games in front of us. So interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, isn't that what Kyle Shanahan was like? I don't even know what's going to happen next Sunday.
Yeah. I don't even know if I'll be alive tomorrow or something like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that's one of those things. And I get what Grant is trying to do, getting ahead of a story. But in this instance, Grant a lot of times asks a lot of good questions. This is one of those questions that I understand why people on the 49ers get pissed at him.
Yeah.
Because we're in the middle of an 8-game winning streak. Why the fuck are you talking about next year? We're not even to the playoffs yet. Yeah. What you're just trying to stir up shit. Yep. That question was he's got his little, spoon in the pot and he's just stirring the shit. So, and that's my dog. So
no, I 100% agree. Trying to get ahead of it, trying to get the headlines, trying to go viral. It is what it is. I appreciate Grant for what he does. With that said, I think we're going to wrap up this show of the Ready to Go Standard podcast. Both got to go have dinner. Matt, was there anything else you wanted to talk about that we didn't talk about?
No, I mean, it was a great win overall. I think that they started slow, but they showed that they can adjust like they usually do. And that's really important. So the 49ers, they can keep doing that kind of thing. I think they're in good shape going into the playoffs. I think they're doing a great job putting Purdy in spots that he can excel. And I don't think that their run game is going to struggle as much as they did against Washington with that one Ray McLeod run notwithstanding. I think they're going to get it together. Elijah Mitchell returning is going to be huge. Deebo Samuel will be back in time for the playoffs. Javon Kinlaw getting out there playing only 16 snaps, but coming out of the game healthy, I think is huge. I think they're also getting Kerry Hyder back at practice this week. The 49ers are starting to get healthy at the right time. And I think that it's going to be something that's going to carry them into the playoffs along with the momentum of all these wins.
Yeah. Not only that, but Javon Kinlaw having 2 big 4th down stops on the 16 snaps that he did play, just huge presence, literally and figuratively. And I think the 49ers, I just want to end with this. A lot of people were saying, yeah, Brock Purdy's doing it. When the 49ers have the running game, Brock Purdy's doing it when they're ahead. Well, what can he do when the running game isn't there, when they're not ahead? Well, he heard you and he went out there. The running game wasn't there. He took the game, put it on his shoulders, and carried the Niners in the second half. And when they weren't ahead, it was 7-7. And like you said, to start the show, they had 30 second half points, which arguably should have been more. They had 9 drives in the red zone 3 drives in the red zone, and they came in with 9 points. Could have been a way bigger blowout than it was. So 17-point win could have easily been a 28-point win. But I think we'll end it there. We'll have another show later in the week to preview the 49ers matchup with the Raiders.
Real quick, I want to address this, though, since we were talking about Grant Cohn. TC says it was a legit question. He asked, those are the questions that 49er fans don't want to answer or hear. Listen, you can ask the right question at the wrong time. All right. If your girlfriend comes up to you and tell you she's pregnant, you don't say, "Are you getting an abortion?" or "I thought we were using condoms." You don't say that. All right. You ask her how she's feeling in that moment, bro. Like, there is the right question at the wrong time. And this was a question that you saved for the beginning of training camp.
Yeah.
This is where you
Grant knew the answer. I think he knew he wasn't going to get an answer.
He absolutely knew the answer, and he knew what he was doing. And this is why the team gets pissed at him.
Yeah. But I agree with you in the sense that he does ask questions that the other reporters don't have the balls to ask. And I respect him for that.
Of course he does. Yeah. I think his question, oh man, it was like a couple weeks ago. He asked a very pointed question that I thought was very good.
Was it running Debo to get hurt or, something like that? He's asked Kyle Shanahan a few.
He has asked questions, and I thought that he's done a great job asking questions. This one is the right question at the wrong time. Yeah. Save it for the offseason.
Yeah, agreed. All right, guys, thank you very much for tuning in. We all hope you had a very Merry Christmas. Hope you have a Happy New Year. We will see you before then, though. So tune in, hit like, hit subscribe if you haven't. We always forget to ask. Please do. We appreciate you guys tuning in. Matt, you want to carry us out?
Absolutely. It was another great win. 49ers riding an 8-game winning streak. They look to be the hottest team in the NFL right now. Let's carry that momentum forward. That being said, we love having you here. We want to keep our momentum going forward. It was another great show. On behalf of Zach and myself, we love you guys. We love having you here. And until next time, go Niners.